Welcome to the Shortway Show. So happy to have you here. This a little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And yes, you got to look at me. That's kind of the rules. But that's okay because it's going to be a good, cool show. And you know it is, or you wouldn't be watching. So do the right thing. You know what I'm going to bug you to do? So just do it now. Click that like button. It does matter. It helps to get past those algorithms that I need to get rid of and get around. So please help me out by liking the show. If you could, wherever you're watching, whether you're watching on Twitter or Facebook, or YouTube or Twitch or wherever you're watching, click the equivalent of the like button, whatever that thing is. Don't click the don't like button on YouTube because that's like a negative and no one will see it. If you don't like it, click don't like on, like, I don't know, Facebook or something. Anyway, or just like the show. In any case, I'm happy that you are here with me this evening. I have someone with me, a very special guest, someone who I think is going to give an interesting outlook on women's defense and on freedom while still supporting women, which sometimes you think about women's rights and you go right to a certain type of person. This person's not that person. This person's the president of the Women's Defense League. She's an activist. She's also a writer at Granite Grok, and she is a current New Hampshire resident, woman herself, Kimberly Morin. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. And for those of you who want to know more about her, very easy. You can follow her Twitter if you want to at conservativeind, that's at Twitter, or check her out with her writing at granitegrok.com. If you are listening to this, it's Granite, Granite, Grok, Grok. So let me ask you, the thing that I like about you most, and there are many things I like about you, the thing I like about you most is you agree with an outlook on the Second Amendment that I do, which is you focus on the idea of defense. Mm-hmm. And most 2A people focus on constitutionality, which I don't focus on because too many people from the left don't care about that. Right? So I focus on the concept of defense, and so do you. Why?
Because it protects, the Second Amendment protects our fundamental human right to self-defense. That it's protecting that. That's a naturally or God-given right, whatever you want to believe, but the Second Amendment protects that right in the United States. So that's what I focus on. And the other thing too is I believe that the Second Amendment is the most important women's rights issue in modern history.
Wow. That is a bold statement. And the problem is while I wouldn't have said it that way, you saying it makes you think, yeah, that's really, I might agree with you. I mean, it's a big deal because I've often said that people who are, that gun laws in general are everything-ist. They are sexist, they are racist, they are ableist, they are all the bad ists. They are all the things. Because the gun laws stop someone who is going to be an actual victim, someone who needs the gun to equalize. It's the girlfriend who dumped her boyfriend who wants to now harm her. She doesn't get to have a gun. It's the older person who can't afford to leave the bad neighborhood, who now is going to be beat up by the thugs. They need it, right? So that's ableist or ageist, right? It's and all the gun laws I know in New York State, and I assume in New Hampshire also, but in New York State, gun laws in New York State that are supposed to get, in theory, the bad militia bad guys is supposed to get them, is used against black kids in the city. Those are the people. All gun laws put black kids in jail. That's what they do. So I'm sorry, I'm yapping away because I agree with you so much. Please go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, first of all, we have constitutional carry in New Hampshire, which I along with the Women's Defense League and others were on the front lines of fighting for. And we finally got it passed under our current governor. It was the first law he signed when he took office. You're right. But what gun control laws do, without even bringing up all the isms and the ists, is they enable criminals.
Yes.
Gun control is a partnership between Democrats and criminals and those Republicans who might vote for gun control as well. But, the Democrats seem to be the majority of people and a party that want to push useless gun control laws that enable criminals and only harm and create more victims, innocent victims, I might add.
Yes. I mean, the thing is, look, I grew up in a bad neighborhood, and I grew up in the South Bronx when I was a kid, and it wasn't a good neighborhood. And I knew a lot of teenagers I wasn't a teenager when I grew up. I was a little kid when I grew up in it, but I knew a lot of teenagers who carried a weapon. And they didn't carry a weapon because they wanted to rob a liquor store. That wasn't
Right.
the reason. They carried a weapon because there were bad guys around who would take their stuff and they would brandish. Brandishing was a thing. I mean, I assume it still is. I don't know. I haven't been in that neighborhood in a very long time. And I'm also
Right.
not a young kid anymore. But when I was a kid in the 70s, you would brandish. You would literally lift your shirt and say, okay, are we going here? Right?
Right.
Brandish. You would do it all. That was a thing. And then people would back off and go, okay, you're not somebody I want to mess with. Right? That would happen. Or you have multiple guys around you. That was a thing in bad neighborhoods. I'm sure that still exists in bad neighborhoods. So now what happens? The cops come by and arrest everybody. And the kid who's defending himself from the gang is now going to jail.
Right. Right. Because they don't do anything about the gangs. They
Correct.
don't do
Yes.
they don't do anything about the criminals.
Yes. Absolutely. Completely true. And now you see it, I think, more than ever here, particularly in New York City where I live. I mean, there's a lot. There was a time in New York City prior to 2020 where, well, being a cop was a challenging job. It wasn't a particularly dangerous job. I shouldn't say it wasn't a deadly job. It was rare that cops were killed in New York City before 2020. I mean, literally, this is actually true. There was more chance you'd be shot by another cop than by a bad guy before 2020. We have 40,000 cops in New York City. That is
Wow.
how non-deadly it was to be a cop in New York City. Those days are over. Now cops get killed in New York City. That's now a thing. This job went from being challenging to being deadly. This is now a deadly job in New York City. And why? We have the strictest gun control laws in the entire country.
Right.
And cops get shot. The strictest in the entire country. No state or city has worse gun control, or I should say, stronger gun control laws than we do. And our cops are being shot now. It just goes to show what you're talking about. It's just terrible.
By criminals with illegal firearms. These guys aren't buying firearms legally because
Correct.
of the gun control laws. So
Right.
they're buying them illegally. It's probably easier to get a firearm illegally in New York City than it is for a law-abiding citizen to legally get one.
No doubt. That's 100% true. Right. We've taken off this year. The last time I checked, we had taken out, I think, 8,000 guns off the streets of New York City, if I'm not mistaken. And there's no decrease in gun violence.
Wow.
They just get new ones. Like they get new ones,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's that easy to get guns. They just get the new gun, right?
Right.
I told my wife, I was joking. She's like, Larry, if you get a gun, I said I'd probably get a gun for probably $300-400. I'd probably get one within about 2 hours. If I
Yeah.
wanted one, I probably
You
could.
just got to
Right.
know where to go.
Yes, absolutely. I'd ask a couple friends. They'd be like, "Yeah, go talk to that guy." I probably would, right? I don't have a gun. I don't want to get arrested in New York City. I'll go to jail, right? So I don't want to do that. But I'm just saying, if I probably could if I wanted to. I think your
Right.
point's very valid. And some people get mad at me, which is why I love what you do. Some people get mad at me when I talk about gun control being racist. And they say, Larry, but it's unconstitutional. I said, that isn't the point.
No.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but for us to make sure that our Second Amendment rights are upheld in any way, we have to get Democrats and left-leaning people to, at a minimum, be apathetic, right? Hopefully supportive, but at a minimum, apathetic, or we're in trouble. Am I wrong here?
No, you're 100% right. Look, we have to, if the right or the middle or whatever hasn't learned from the left by now to play the same game, you have to hit the emotions, which is why we used it as a women's rights issue and
Yes.
won. They used the constitutional issue for years in New Hampshire. It didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But it still took us a few years too, because we had a Democrat governor at first, but we even had Democrats who were supporters of the Second Amendment testifying at hearings for constitutional carry. And we painted the bill as it was state sanctioned discrimination. So that was state sanctioned. It was originally, the intent was racism. And
Mhm.
then 190 years later, it was against LGBT. It was against women. And we had
Yep.
proof of this. We had people testifying because we weren't a shall issue like our laws had so supposedly said. We were a may issue and we had to get
Yes.
permission.
Yep.
So you have to use that emotional argument because you're right. The Democrats, the left, they don't care about the Constitution
They don't.
unless
They don't.
it's certain things that benefit them at a certain point in time.
Right. You're totally correct. They would. Most people on the left would eliminate the Second Amendment tomorrow if they could.
Oh,
Tomorrow.
they
They wouldn't think twice.
Democrats in New Hampshire, we're going to push a bill to repeal or
Yep.
discuss repealing New Hampshire's Second Amendment. I'm like, good luck with that one, guys.
Yes,
They have
they absolutely
failed.
were.
They have failed at all gun control, even when it was Democrat controlled. Their gun control has failed because we have such a strong Second Amendment community in New Hampshire.
So let me go to the other piece, which I like very much, which is you give me hope because you've talked about how people who are on the left have come to your classes,
Hmm.
how they have come to, learn about self-defense. And these are people who, prior to showing up were like, guns are bad, guns are bad, guns are bad. And now they're like, well, maybe not. Tell me about
This is
that.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have
yes,
we have our, obviously we don't discuss politics other than gun control or gun
sure.
related things in our classes, but we have had women come who are petrified of guns, and they wanted to take a class to see what it was about, learn about it,
Yep.
and they always leave with a smile on their face. As soon as they take that first shot, we always look, and they always have a big smile on their face and want to shoot more. And
Yes.
then we talk, and it's all women, so it's an environment for women, by women, run by women, the whole thing. And so
Wow.
it's easier for them to open up, right?
Sure.
If they have some kind of issues. We've had women who were victims of stalking or a violent crime
Yes.
or an abusive relationship, and that they left. We've had people, women, and I don't want to say people, women from all walks of life, all ages, all economics, all political parties, everything, um, because they want to learn, or they want to learn and then protect themselves. We had one woman who came; her husband had died, so
Mm.
she was a widow, but and she had all his guns at home. He used to protect the home. She
Sure.
was terrified of the guns. She came to several classes. We finally got her on the range. She was crying. She did it, and now she is quite badass. She
But
she
there's the
continues
second
taking
piece I want to
training.
bring up. You know, people will often say things like, well, they just like the power of firing the gun or something. And I would say there's a part of that's true, but so what if that's true? The
Right,
point is the person is gaining self-confidence, right? In a world to where, at least America for sure, and I think most of the world, there's a narrative now that if you're not a male, and in many cases, if you're not a white male, you are by default weak and need to be helped, right? You are a victim, you need to be helped. Now, you might be weak. That's true. People are. Some people are more able than others. That's true. You
right,
might be physically smaller than others, right? Many women are smaller than most men. True, usually, right? True. But it doesn't mean you have to be helpless,
correct.
right? And if you feel helpless, I would rather you find the right tool for you. If that's a firearm, or if that's mace, or if that's pepper spray, or whatever is the thing that works to make you feel more comfortable, to make you feel more confident, so you can get out there and still be the person that you need to be in your life without always feeling afraid. Am I wrong here?
No, it's empowering women is what it
Thank
is.
you. You
It
said it
that's
way better than me. I went way too long. That was good.
Well,
Yes.
that's well, that's what our theme is. We're women empowering women, and that's exactly what
Mm.
it is. Because, like I said, that widow who was terrified of firearms but wanted to protect herself, and her husband was no longer there to do it. She relied on him before to do it. Now she felt empowered once she started shooting and getting more training and practicing. She's empowered to take care of herself now. She doesn't have to live in fear of these firearms in her house, or of someone coming in and possibly harming her and her not being able to protect herself. Because we
Right.
all know that as great as the cops and dispatch are, it seconds matter and the cops are minutes away. You know,
100%.
I've listened to too many 911 calls where women were on the phone, calling 911, they were being attacked, and the women who had firearms were able to be survivors and
Yep.
not victims, and the
Yep.
women who didn't were not. It was
Yes.
horrifying listening to those calls, but it had to be done because I had to understand from that
Yes.
point why it's so important. You know, I jokingly say to gun control people, I'm like, I carry a firearm because I can't carry a cop.
Yeah.
I'm my own security. That's why
Yes.
it makes me angry that scumbags like Michael Bloomberg, who is a billionaire, lives in New York City, he can hire armed security for his family. He can have 20
Many of yes.
24/7 armed security. Yet he spends millions of dollars and spent hundreds of thousands in New Hampshire pushing gun control. So we can't be our own security. We're our own first
Well,
responders.
you aren't as savvy or smart as Bloomberg. Neither am I. He's better than us. He's richer. So
Yeah.
there, he's obviously better than
Yeah.
us.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
No,
He knows
there's a
better
joke
than
I
I do
said.
how to protect myself.
There's a joke I've said before. I go to many people. I do it when I'm in New York and I do any type of event. I'll often ask, okay, who here owns a firearm? And in New York City, no one either does or they don't want to say, right? So
Yeah.
almost no hands go up, right? So I go, okay. I say, actually, you all do. They go, what? I said, we all do. They go, what do you mean? The cops just hold them for us. When we have a problem, we call our guns and the cops bring our guns. So we
That's a
all own
good
guns.
one.
Yes, and they go, oh, I'm like, yeah. So we all own guns. We all pay for them through our taxes. So we all
Yeah.
own the guns. And when we have a problem, we can say, hey, cops, bring our guns. And cops go, yeah, got you. And they bring our guns. Well, instead of the cops waiting for the cops to bring us guns, we could just have them.
Well, and often by the time the cops get there, it's too late.
That's my point.
They're drawing chalk outlines, and they brought the guns,
They
but
did.
it's too late.
It's too late. And that was my point. That we
Yeah.
do. They joke about saying, well, the only thing that'll stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And they laugh at that. But they called the good guy with a gun.
Right.
They literally called the good guy with a gun.
Yep.
So, yes, that's why I do that joke, because most people in cities will always tell me they don't own a firearm. And I'll express how they do. It changed their mindset, right? That changes their mindset in trying to go, okay, maybe I could do this. Let me grab a couple of comments if you don't mind. I've got a bunch of comments here. As always, Pete Clark, because he's Pete Clark, he brings up the national debt. And I will read it out. 31 trillion, 328 billion, 478 million, $657,710.42. This is just in case anyone forgot. This is Pete giving us a very cool PSA. Thank you, Pete. I appreciate that. So, Medic Knight's unhappy. Medic Knight says, Kimberly, why do politicians get to decide / legislate what gun laws abiding citizens can own? What guns law-abiding citizens can own? Okay, got it. Sorry. What guns law-abiding citizens can own? And I think it's a valid question. Go ahead, please.
Well, because we gave them that power. We allowed it. They should have never passed any gun control ever in the history of this country, but they did, and they kept doing it and kept doing it. You notice, Medic Knight, we fight back. A bunch of states over the past 10 years, ironically, since the gun control crowd got really loud and more obnoxious, more states have passed constitutional carry and reversed bad gun control laws than ever before.
Absolutely.
Obviously, except for when we didn't have gun control laws. But we allow them, and we keep voting them back in. Like, if we allow the behavior to continue, that's what we're going to get. That
well,
we allow it.
Step further. One of the reasons why I worry sometimes is because everything that I hate the government's done is because of afraid Americans. It's very rare. It does happen. I mean, I think the lockdowns were exceptions to this rule. Prior to lockdowns, I'll say, it was very rare that government just took our freedoms. Almost always, we eagerly voted them away because we were afraid, right? We very often give them away because I'm afraid. War on drugs, I'm afraid. War on guns, I'm afraid. War on terror, I'm afraid. War on COVID, I'm afraid. Everything is I'm afraid, so take my rights away. Here in New York City, when they locked us down at 7:00 every night, people come onto their windows and clap for the essential workers who were still working, the government workers. We all stayed. We literally clapped for our jailers. Now, that's some second level Stockholm syndrome we got here in New York City. Like you thought you had Stockholm syndrome? We got you beat on that one. We got second level.
Well, and they kept doing it. They kept doing it. And they said, please, sir, may I have some more?
Yes. Yes.
dumbfounded by how
Absolutely.
bad people just said, okay, 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 I'll do
Absolutely.
whatever you say. And they know now, or at least most
Yep.
people should, that everything we told them at the very beginning was true and that the government
Right.
lied to them all the past 2 years. But there's still millions of people out there who think the government's right. Fauci
Yep.
isn't a fraud who should be on trial for crimes against humanity. And we're just all theorists still, even though everything was proven what we said at the very beginning to be right.
Well, this goes what Dave says. Dave says, Larry, a Democrat would say, we wouldn't have so much crime if there weren't so many guns.
They do.
And look, I do hear that all the time. And what I would ask you is, there are many countries around the world that don't have as many guns as us, and they have higher crime rates.
Hmm.
In fact, I think was it 2020? It was a couple years ago. London had a higher murder rate than New York City. I think it was 2020, but it was in that area,
I
2019,
think you're right. Yeah,
2021.
it was right around there.
Yeah, London had a higher murder rate than New York City. A higher murder rate than New York City, and it has the strictest gun controls, and there's almost no guns. If you're a cop in London, you don't even carry a gun. You got to go. The cop calls for guns.
Yep.
I'm not making that up. The cop has to go, oh, this is bad. Let me call for my guns. And other cops come with his guns. And still, there's a picture of a guy who stabbed somebody underneath an anti-knife poster saying, don't stab people. And England actually thought about, I'm not making this up, registering knives.
Banning them. They do knife buybacks. When I first saw knife buyback, it was years ago.
Yes.
I saw it, I think, on Facebook. I was like, that's got to be a joke, right? It wasn't. It was real.
No.
So
Yep.
they banned all
They
the
were considering
firearms.
registering it.
They banned
Yes.
all the firearms, so law-abiding citizens could no longer protect themselves from the criminals. What the criminals do? Use hands, fists, and knives. And they were still doing it. The criminals
Yep.
are still being criminals, only now they have victims who have no way to protect themselves.
If you look at people who are assaulted and killed in America today, the most common method is being beaten to death. It's the most common method, right? People still use what's around them: stick, bottle, fist, kick,
Yep.
bat, whatever.
Well,
That's still the most common way.
they always talk about wanting to ban black scary rifles. They call them assault weapons. They aren't. They're just semi-automatic rifles that work the same way as a handgun. But they always talk about that. But when you look at the stats, oh my God, we got to ban these rifles. But when you look at the stats, every year over history, more people are killed with knives or blunt objects and
Every
hands,
time.
feet, and fists than rifles every single year. But
Yep.
they want to ban these things.
And literally in every single country.
Yeah.
That's in every country, regardless
Yeah.
of gun control laws. That's every country.
Right.
Somalia, that's true. It doesn't matter. That is
Yep.
true in every single country, regardless of gun control laws. You're right. Absolutely. So this is more controversial, I think, but not for me, but maybe for you it is. Pete says, want to help defend your right to keep and bear arms? Cancel your NRA membership and give instead to those groups that actually do what people think the NRA does: Gun Owners of America and the Firearms Policy Coalition. Now, I know some people like the NRA. I am with Pete, though. I am not an NRA fan. I would rather go GOA, rather go Firearm Policy Coalition. In fact, when I ran for governor, the NRA wouldn't even rate me. GOA did. GOA rated me and my lieutenant governor and gave me A+ in both. So they rated me effectively. NRA wouldn't even rate me. So I don't know. Do you have a view on any of these?
I don't like what I like about the NRA is their educational
Mhm.
programs. I'm a certified instructor in multiple areas. Um, there's their education programs could be better, but they're very good for training other people, other women in our case. They're the largest world's um, training organization for firearm safety in the world. I mean,
Mhm.
so those other organizations don't do that, that I know of. Um,
Okay.
so that's why I agree with them on that. I don't agree with them on their policy to most of
Okay.
the time, you know.
Yes.
So
Patty says,
that's one.
don't hand me a gun. I'd shoot myself in a leg and need to be carried, but I'll defend your right to protect me and yourself if needed. And this reminds me, right? If more people were like Patty, we'd be fine. I don't want everyone to have a gun. I want those people who want a gun to have a gun.
Right.
And the Second Amendment actually isn't about guns. It's about arms.
Right.
So if you would rather have mace or if you'd rather have pepper spray, that's good. But if you want to have a gun, go ahead. Am I wrong on this?
No, I agree with you. And you know what, Patricia, if you come to me, I will help you. But
There you go. Well, she's close to you. She's actually in Plattsburgh.
where's that? In New Hampshire?
Plattsburgh, right across from Vermont. It's right there.
Come on down. We get
Right there.
women from Massachusetts, Vermont, and Maine all the time.
Mhm.
You know what? If you so a lot of times women have had bad experiences with boyfriends or husbands teaching them how to shoot.
Mm.
Just because it's a too big of a firearm,
Yep.
whatever, for whatever reason. And then, they come to us and we start off with, a 22 caliber. So it's
Sure.
low,
So I
it's
taught
not
my
a lot
wife
of
on.
recoil. Yes.
Yep.
And it's a good idea. And,
By the way, that was in Pennsylvania, not in New York. So don't call the cops on me. I took my wife to Pennsylvania to show her. I couldn't do it in New York State, so I went to Pennsylvania to do it. So just so you know, nobody called the cops on me. It was in Pennsylvania when I did it.
I
Anyway, go
thought,
ahead.
yeah,
No, you
New
cannot
York.
have a fire. You cannot have a firearm in New York. Just don't bother in New York City. Don't bother. Don't. You can't bring your legally owned firearm into New York City if you even follow all TSA rules. You will go to Rikers Island. I'm not joking. The most violent jail in the country. And I'm not
Wow.
making this up. Google it. They're happily, and the DA will happily put you in jail when you bring your legally owned firearm into New York City and you follow all TSA guidelines.
So I recently drove from New Hampshire to North Carolina. I avoided New York City like the plague.
Smart move.
I went
Smart
up
move.
and around and took the Governor Cuomo Bridge, which is way, far
The
enough
Tappan Zee
away.
Bridge. Yes.
I didn't even, I stayed away
Yes.
from going through the city. My
Smart move.
Google Maps tried to take me right through the city, New York
Yep.
City, Philly, DC area. I said, no, 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 no,
No, no.
no.
Smart move. So
Staying
I'm
away
going to
from
tell
all
a
those places.
story that I often tell. And years ago, I used to be a teacher. And one of the teachers that I used to work with, she was a total and absolute pacifist. She was like, I would never kill anybody. I would never, no matter what, I would never do it. And of course, one of the teachers said, okay, so like, what if you were going to get raped? Would you want to shoot your assailant? And she said, no, not even that. I would rather talk my way out of it. I've been in that position before. So she said, and I did talk my way out of it. And if I couldn't, then I would rather deal with the trauma of being raped than the trauma of murdering someone, killing someone. And I stepped in, I said, okay, would you stop somebody else from shooting the assailant? She went, no. I said, well, good then. You live your values, I live mine. I'm shooting a guy. And I think most women are going to shoot the guy. And that's fine, right? But if you want to deal with your trauma your way, I'm not going to stop you, right?
It's your choice.
Your choice.
This is what gets me about the gun control crowd. They're the first ones to say my body, my choice when it comes to things like abortion. Of course, not the vaccine. But when it comes to my right as a woman to protect myself how I choose,
Yep.
they're not interested in my body, my choice.
Yes. I
And
agree. It's
of
your
course, I
choice.
have a protected right to protect myself how I choose, but not to
Absolutely.
them. The only choice they
Yes.
care about is that, that one thing. They don't care about choice
Yes.
for women for when it comes to anything else.
William says, you and Maj Toure are shouting the fact that gun control is racist. Black guns matter. I love Maj.
Yep.
He exactly right. William's exactly correct. We're always talking about it. And I remember somebody got mad at me once on one of my shows going, why are you saying it's racist constitution? I said, because I use any argument that will work.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever argument will get my audience to go, oh, that's the one I'm using. Doesn't matter which one.
And that's why I use it as a women's rights issue because I'm a woman.
Exactly.
It works for me. For him, it works for racism, and it's true. I mean, we threw everything. We threw the whole kitchen sink at them when we were fighting for constitutional carry, and it worked.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
it's that you have to figure out the way the left is working because emotions, even though it's ridiculous, to be honest with you, it's not. If you're a logical person,
But it's human.
It's human, exactly. And
It's
it's
human.
so you pull at people's emotional strings. I remember one time I was testifying in a committee, a criminal justice committee in New Hampshire, and there was two hardcore gun control Democrats on the committee, women, and I pulled at their heartstrings. And I literally was looking right at them often, when talking, but they voted against a gun control bill that one of their fellow Democrats put in. Of course, they
There
got
you
their
go.
hands slapped and voted in committee for it, but I mean, on the floor for it, but they voted against it. And that was,
Yes,
you can
absolutely.
you can make things happen by using those emotions. Obviously, you have
Absolutely.
to know what you're talking about. You can't just make things up. You have to know what you're talking about, but talking about it in a way that is true, but reaches out to people on a different wavelength than just black and white.
So let me do a little bit of work here. If you're watching this on Twitter, then do me a favor, subscribe and follow the Sharp Way Twitter. It's important to. I'm trying to grow that Twitter. I know I have like 7 Twitters and 7 everything. I know, but do the Sharp Way one today. Sharp Way Twitter if you don't mind, and then retweet this. If you like what we're doing, retweet it so other people can see it. We can get past the algorithms. Please do if you would. Please subscribe to the Sharp Way Twitter, not Larry Sharp Twitter, which is also awesome, not Neil Says Twitter, which is also awesome. But don't do the Sharp Way Twitter. That's an important one. And if you are watching on Twitter, please retweet it. It does matter. People should watch it. They see what we're talking about. This is an important issue that we're talking about, and more people should see it. And if you want to follow what she's talking about here, you can go to granitegrok.com. If you're listening only to this, GraniteGrok.com. And you can follow Kimberly directly on Twitter at conservative IND on Twitter. So if I can keep going for a second, I want to go to the victim idea. We have, I think, in America, confused the idea of victim and hero. And almost as if because you go through the thing, you are weakened for some way, you are somehow disabled in some way, you are hurt in some way, that makes you a hero by default. And what I would say is, no, that makes you a victim, right? It's a victim. It's bad that the thing happened to you, whatever that thing is. The hero is someone who goes through the thing, whatever bad thing it is, and then still achieves something, whatever the thing is, right? They're able to move forward past it. So the idea of being the victim is almost heroic in itself now. And I feel like that has to be broken. And I feel like the Second Amendment is a great way of making that happen. Gun training gives people confidence, but something else, it makes them more responsible. And Maj says this all the time. Maj talks about the idea that once you give someone firearm training, you tell them things like, if you pull a trigger and anything comes out of the barrel of that firearm, you're responsible for what happens. Doesn't matter what happens, you're responsible. You are going to pay the price for whatever happens if something comes out of that barrel, you're paying the price for that. So be clear before you pull that trigger, because you are responsible. And he says that type of thought process helps to make people responsible in general. And I think it goes to the next level, which is statistically, the more legal gun owners you have in any given area, the less felons you have. Right? Legal gun owners are literally have a less likelihood of committing felonies than people who are not legal gun owners.
Well, that's because we lose our Second Amendment rights if we commit a felony.
Well, no, I mean, but no, if you are a legal gun owner, you don't commit the felony. I mean, the person who hasn't committed one yet. Right.
Right.
That's
No,
what I mean.
if you commit a felony, you lose your Second Amendment rights. So hello. It's pretty stupid if you go out and commit a felony, or even technically it could be a misdemeanor in your state. But if you get a sentence, if you can get a sentence a year or more, then the feds consider it a felony, which I think is ridiculously stupid, but whatever. But yeah, no, of course, I obey the law. Let me tell you, you're right. It's totally true, because you don't want to lose those rights, and you're more, more responsible in that way.
Absolutely. And I think that's a key piece. And I like that idea, particularly, and it's going to sound bad, but I'm going the opposite way, for young men, right? Who are looking for purpose, who are struggling to find that idea of, am I really a good man? Right. And they don't know how to do that. And so they join a gang, or they go do something stupid with their friends or whatever to try to see, I'm a man, right? See? And then I'm like, no. Here's a man showing that you have the discipline to carry a firearm and not go to jail. That's a man, right? Showing that you are prepared to defend people around you if you be. That's a man.
Right. No, I agree. And I think having more role models like that, good role models in general, having good male role models is a good thing
Yes.
across
And the other
society.
and the other thing you bring up is the idea of new shooters coming to you. And I remember when I was in the Marine Corps, I was a coach. I was a rifle coach, a marksmanship coach in the Marine Corps. And I remember that my best shooters were those who had never had a firearm before. They had no bad habits to break,
Yep.
right? They just and some of them were afraid. We were using M16s then. I don't know if they still use it now, but we were using the M16A2. This is the 80s, so I don't know if they still use the same firearms in the Marine Corps anymore. But we were using M16A2s, and there were people who looked at it and were like, "Oh my God, what is this?" Like they were afraid of it. And so you take them through it, you show it, and they just do whatever you say. And they shoot amazingly. And they're getting expert shots where some guy, comes from the stereotype Kentucky guy that carries a rifle over his shoulder, right? I'm
Yeah.
teasing Kentucky today. But the stereotype I mean, right? He's like, I know how to do this thing. And he screwed all up because he's Kentucky windage and trying to shoot into the wind and doing all kind of crazy stuff. So you brought that up before, and I just love that idea. It's a
Well,
great
and
idea that yes.
I was going to say they don't know safety. They're not typically, and
Mm,
I've had this from women who became instructors. They were brought up with firearms, and they said they said they had to undo all their old bad habits, relearn the proper safety. So we hardcore on the safety when we're teaching women in
yes.
our classes. The whole class, safety, safety. We're teaching them how a gun works, how to hold it, all that stuff. But safety, 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 safety. Like we drill it. They are amazing at listening.
Yes.
It, a few times you might have to say, "Oh, finger off the frame," whatever,
Right.
but they
Or
get
they
used to
they
it.
they point it around sometimes a little bit more than I like.
They're
They do that
not usually
sometimes.
they don't usually do that because I'm also the chief range safety officer. So a
Ah,
lot
got
of
it.
time
Okay.
so a lot of time you can tell I kind of have a big mouth. So
That's probably a good thing, though.
it is for that role. It is
Yes.
definitely because they listen. It's like keep it pointed
Yep.
down the range. They're very good. Obviously we always suggest everyone gets more training, but they are
Right.
usually really good shots too.
Hmm.
First time, most of the women will hit at least the first shot somewhere on the target, and then we adjust how they're shooting,
Right.
and that's why they love it. We don't do make them shoot like these far distances. We have them shoot up close because we want them to leave empowered and
Right.
encouraged to want to do more. And
Good.
I also teach an intro to rifle class. And one of the big things I always get, and it always fills up immediately, everybody hears, women especially, hear all these bad things about black scary rifles again. So
Yep.
I teach them, we teach them the basics about rifles, same as sort of like a basic intro
Sure.
pistol class, teach them about rifles, explain the difference between, explain what a black scary rifle is, how it works, etc.
Hmm.
Have other rifles to show them it's the same thing. Um, and then they go on the range. Oh my God, they love them. They love them more. And we just, again, 22s to start off with. And at the end, if they want to shoot something a larger caliber, they can.
Right. Sure.
And
Of course.
they leave there wanting rifles.
There we go.
So it's it's
So.
it's changing the attitudes in the minds of a core group of people, in my case, women, who have these thoughts and ideas about these things from the media or from the
Hmm.
government. They don't
Yes.
have firsthand experience, so they just believe what they're told.
Yep. A
And it
story I also
works.
tell often is this is years ago. I was at a fundraiser in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma obviously has more lenient gun laws than New York. And I was in someone's home, and it was libertarian, so lots of people were carrying, obviously, right? Some open, some not, but you could see people were carrying. So someone took a picture, and someone here in New York saw it and went, "Oh my God, are those guns?" I went, "Yeah." They went, "Weren't you afraid?" I said, "I'm in the safest place possible. Why would I be afraid? I am surrounded by friends who are all armed. If someone comes in to rob that house, they're gonna have a really bad night. They're really gonna wish you're like, yeah, just kidding. I'm gonna see myself out. Right? There's no way I couldn't be safer. Right? I was
Right.
literally Bloomberg. I was literally Bloomberg.
Right.
Right?
Well, that we hold a Second Amendment rally every year. It was the first
Mhm.
Second Amendment rally held by a women's organization in the state of New Hampshire. And I say that all the time. It's the safest place in the state on that day.
Yes.
Probably all of New England on that day, safest place you could be.
Absolutely. There's no place safer. No one's going to come in there and try to rob the joint. That's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
No, not
Not going
happening.
to happen.
The
So, yes,
aunties, they stay away from us at that, during that rally.
that's correct. So, a couple more comments. Dave says, when minutes count, the police are hours away.
This could be,
Yes.
yeah. In some places, like I live in, it's probably the same in rural upstate New York, in New Hampshire, rural New
Oh,
Hampshire.
yes.
There's not even police departments in some places. They have to wait for the
Correct.
stateies to come. So
Correct.
yeah, there's some places you are literally waiting, could be waiting hours.
There's places upstate New York where it's the cop. Like,
Yeah,
it's the cop. It's not
right.
cops. It's the cop. And if he's having dinner, you're going to have a problem.
Or if
New
he's
York
at
City,
another call.
yeah,
Yeah,
correct. New York City, we got 40,000 cops. It's fine. There's one around the corner, but that's not every place is New York City. So yes.
right.
Dave is teasing me. He says, Larry, rich people are allowed to own guns because they're more important. It's true. Yes, absolutely. Jason says the same people want to take our guns away also want to defund the police. So they take both defenses away. Ooh, I hadn't even thought of it that way. You're right. They do, right? They want to take the guns away and defund the police.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't do both.
They want
Right?
chaos. You've already seen what they've been doing all across the country, especially big cities. Big cities is where you really see it. This bail reform crap. And now I agree 100% that we need reforms in our justice system
100%.
because it is
Yep.
it is crap. I agree with
Absolutely.
that.
Correct.
But what they
Yep.
did was they went from one extreme to another. And that's why you're seeing all the huge crime increases and the lack of morale for cops and cops being killed and regular people being killed, robbed, carjacked, everything. Crime is up everywhere because of this attitude and what they're doing. They want chaos. They want the inmates running the asylum.
Correct. Pete says common sense knife control. That's good. I like that. Barbara says in New York City, they reinforced the lockdowns were necessary and for the best. Meanwhile, students developed and had worse mental health problems.
Yeah.
There's the piece that I want to bring up because what changed in 2020? Right. I said before 2020, it was rare that cops were killed in New York City. Very rare. Now cops get killed in New York City. What changed? Lockdowns. Lockdowns changed. Things got worse. And instead of us accepting that it was the lockdowns that were literally, if you had an addiction but not a mental illness problem, now you got both. If you had a mental illness problem and you didn't have an addiction problem, now you got both. So you got both. If you already had both, it got worse. Both got worse. No matter what, you got worse if you had a problem because of lockdowns.
Right.
So violence got worse. But not just that. We took all our young men and said, you can't go to work. You can't go to school. Go stay home and hang out in the corner. Not just that, we said we're going to make it so that no one can get anything into your city. We're going to trash the supply chain. So everything's more expensive, and I got a bunch of young men on the corner. The gangbanger said, thank you. Oh, my God. You've given me a market, and you've given me a workforce. Thank you, government. And now we have gang violence. Most of the gun violence is gang violence.
Correct.
That's the vast majority. I know in New York City, they shoot people in the middle of the day. That's not done because I'm angry at my girlfriend. That's done because I'm sending a message to the gang across the street whose territory this is. That is gang violence. And gun control is going to work because all those guns are illegal. All of them. It doesn't matter how we actually in New York State, we made ghost guns that were already illegaler. And we said we're fixing things. That's how bad we are.
So I don't know if you saw recently, there was a study done by the CDC that, Biden's pushing and the gun control crowd is pushing. More children than ever died from firearm related deaths in whatever 2020, I think it was. And if you looked children, I ripped apart the study and ripped apart the ages, and it was the majority of children were gangbangers from like 15 to 19. They consider children 19.
They consider children 19, correct. Children 19.
Yeah.
And the increase happened in 2020, which is gang violence.
Correct.
The same number of suicides were the same. And the number of kids shot in mass shootings was still under 50 across the entire country.
Right.
Hadn't changed.
So
It
so
was all gang violence.
they push things. They put things out there to spew a narrative of propaganda that isn't true. And the problem is millions of Americans believe them.
Yes,
And this is why it's
absolutely.
so important for all of us who know the truth to spread that truth and have a voice, because you can change people's minds. I know it for a
Yes,
fact. You know it for a fact.
absolutely.
Anyone who's an activist knows it. You can change people's minds. So that's why it's so important to get to the truth and spread it, because it does change people's minds.
Absolutely. Andrea says Illinois wants to pass an assault rifle ban. How can they pass a law when they don't know what assault rifles are? That's good. They even want to put a law on how much ammo a clip can hold. They have that in New York State already with the ammo piece, and that's already being challenged and already lost in Western New York. But I'll go to Japan. Japan has very strict laws on ammunition. Like, you have to keep track of every bullet you fire. Every bullet. You have to keep track of every bullet you fire in Japan. And their former prime minister was literally shot to death. He was assassinated.
Yes.
Yes,
I remember
he was
that.
shot.
Yes, I remember
Yes.
that. Yep.
Abe was shot. And you cannot get stricter. The Japanese have a history. They have that some of you history buffs may love this. I think it was 1580s. The Japanese had what's called the Tai-Ho sword hunt. And why does this matter? Because it's precedent in Japanese government from literally 400 years ago. The Tai-Ho sword hunt, they decided that only samurai could have swords. And they went house to house and took every knife and or sword they could and confiscated them all. That also happened in China. That's one of the reasons why the martial arts were in East Asia, because the government confiscated weapons. They had to fight with their hands and fists and sticks and such. That's why the martial arts came out. They found other ways of fighting because the government physically would take your weapons. In Japan, they were fanatics. If you were caught with a sword, they would behead you. That is how hard they were in Japan. So that's why they now have a precedent of today confiscating guns, confiscating swords. That's in their culture. They're totally fine with it. And with that kind of culture, their prime minister was assassinated with a gun. Just insane.
Yeah. So she was, that last comment was talking about Illinois.
Sure. Please go ahead.
There is a federal assault weapon ban that I don't know if any Republicans signed on. A lot of Democrats signed on. I know the idiots that are my senators signed on. That it doesn't ban assault rifles, because there is no such thing unless you're in the military, and we can't own anything that is a military firearm manufactured after 1986. It's against the law. And even the ones before 1986 cost thousands of dollars. It's way above most people's pay grade. And you get extreme, intense gun, background checks. But the federal assault weapon ban that they're trying to push, what does it really do? It bans common semi-automatic rifles, common semi-automatic handguns, and common shotguns. And they want to limit how much ammo you can hold in a magazine to 10.
Wow.
10 rounds, no matter what it is, 10. Because they somehow know how many attackers you might have to fight off, how many rounds you might need to fight even one attacker off. I listened, excuse me, years ago, I listened to one of those 911 calls I was telling you about. And this guy who's drugged up, he was 6'5", 350 pounds, hepped up on drugs. It took 5 cops to take him down. God only knows, how many rounds it would take to stop him before getting attacked.
Right.
So the same people that can hire their own security, have security at their workplace, where most of us don't.
Absolutely.
They want to limit the firearms you can use, limit the rounds. And think about that. If they make it illegal to have more than 10 rounds, other than for cops, of course, they can have as many rounds as they want.
Many as they want.
The people who hate cops and say cops are racist want to have the cops to have as much as they want.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
But they want to limit the rounds. So think about it. All the firearms people have today, there's 400 million, supposedly,
Over 300
whatever.
million. Yep.
How many firearms would be rendered useless because the magazine would hold more than 10 rounds? Are they going to stop you to make sure you only have 10 rounds in it? Or do you have to get a new magazine
that's
made?
the point.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
The point. Yes. They want to, and then they'll arrest you because now, see, You
You had
had to get a
11.
magazine that has 11 in it. So, yeah, sorry. Off the Joe you go.
Exactly.
That's already happened in New York State. So,
Oh my,
yes, that is the plan.
it's
Yes.
about control. That's what people have to understand. It's about control. It's not
Yes.
about laws or safety. It's about control. It does
One
nothing to
thing
make
I'll
us
often
safer.
use is many people are against, the war on drugs. Very common compared to war on guns. More people are
Mm,
okay with the war on guns than war on drugs. So often when I'll be in an event, I'll ask people, I'll talk to people, I'll say, you know what? Possession should not be a crime, right? Because you possess it. You got to be a crime because you got weed on you or whatever. That's a crime. Like, yeah, you're right. Possession should be a crime. I go, yeah, even guns. They go, what? What? So yeah, possession is not a crime. Because I'll say, if you have weed, if you stole it, that's a crime. If
yep.
you hurt somebody to get it, that's a crime. If you broke into someone's house to get it, that's a crime. If you robbed the liquor store to get cash to buy it, that's a crime. These are all crimes. But having the substance, that's not a crime. If I bought it with my money from somebody who was happy to give it to me, why is that a crime? Or if I grew it
Hmm.
in my backyard, I
Right.
didn't steal from anybody, why is that a crime? Well, I have a firearm. Why is it a crime? It's like, yeah. Did I pull it out? Did I threaten somebody with it? Did I shoot somebody? Did I hit someone over the head with it? What did I do something with it? Did I brandish it to get a free soda? Right? Did I do something bad with it? Right? If I did that, that's a crime, 100%. But it doesn't matter if I use the gun to do that, or a knife, or a bat, or whatever.
It's
If
all a
I hit
crime.
someone over the head, it's all a
Yeah.
crime. And
This
do
is
we
what,
have
y-
knife crime? Is there such thing as knife murder? No, it's
no,
just murder. But if it's gun, well, now it's gun murder.
this is what drives me nuts. Do you have you noticed over the past, I think, 5 years, they changed the narrative. I forget what they called it before, but now they call it gun violence. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, but guns are inanimate objects. Guns cannot commit an act of violence.
Correct.
Humans commit acts of violence. And this is why we have such issues with the gun control crowd, because they never want to have an actual discussion about the true issues of
Ever.
why humans are violent. Ever. They
Yep.
will, as soon as the minute something bad happens and someone is murdered, they instantly pick up the narrative. Guns are bad. Guns are bad. They dip their hands in the blood of these victims who
Yep.
haven't even been identified yet to
Yep.
push gun control. And they, because they blame an inanimate object. They never blame
100%.
our mental health issue systems,
Ever.
ki- kids with serious mental
The
health
black
issues.
market. That's the biggest issue. But we're not
Yep,
understanding. I keep saying it, right? It's the black market, which was magnified tenfold by the lockdowns.
huge,
And
huge.
no one says that. And the mental illness piece magnified 10 times by the lockdowns.
Yep.
The lockdowns is why we have all this crime and damage now, is because of the lockdowns. But we don't want to be responsible for that. So we shut up and say more gun laws.
Well, the problem is, even before that, I mean, we remember years ago we shut down all the mental health institutions.
Yep.
There are some people, I'm sorry, there are some people who cannot function in society in
Yes.
a regular way that's even healthy for themselves or others. They had
100%.
institutions. Now, granted, there was abuses and we should have not let that happen. We should have fixed that. But shutting all the mental health institutions down, where people who need to be safe
With
and
no
need,
plan.
yeah, with no,
With
no,
no
no, no,
plan.
no. The plan was untested psychotropic drugs that we're finding out now cause
Yes.
these.
Worse.
Yeah, it makes it worse.
Yes.
So basically, guys, the government effed everything up, and they keep screwing everything up over and over and over again.
Absolutely 100%. Yes. So Jason is teasing us right now, and he says he wants common sense fist control. That's all he wants. Off with your hands. Just common sense fist control. I do like that. I like
I
that.
can't, then I wouldn't be able to talk. I'm not even Italian, but I talk like I'm
There we
Italian.
go. Jason L says gun control is voter suppression. Well, there's something to that, because you told me that you actually left Massachusetts to go to New Hampshire. So they actually lost a voter because of the Second Amendment. Is that right?
That is correct. That was the final straw that broke my liberty loving back. I was actually being threatened by the left, doxxed, death threats, etc.
Wow.
This was back in 2010, because I was involved in the Wisconsin union fight. I was tweeting a lot. I was active in that, making phone calls, whatever. And I was like, I don't have any way to protect myself. If I was
Mm,
working from home, I'm home alone all day. My husband's off at work. What do I do?
Right.
So I looked into getting a firearm in Massachusetts, and it was ridiculous. It was this long list with this process flow of what you had to do to protect yourself, to practice your fundamental human right to defend yourself. And one day I said, "That's it. We're out of here." And my husband said, "Okay."
There we go. Yes.
I
I
fled
like it.
I'm a refugee from Massachusetts, and I've been here for 11 years now. And
Wow. That's
I could
great.
feel the freedom crossing the border on my back.
There we
Just,
go.
for a lot of other things, but that was the big one.
I love it. Well, guys, look, if you want to follow what Kimberly's doing, head over to granitegrok.com. That's grok, grok.com. Or you can follow her directly on Twitter at conservative IND on Twitter if you like. I'm going to ask you something else. I'm going to ask you if you would also, if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube page, right? If you're watching on Twitter, do that on Twitter. On YouTube, do that. And also, when you select notifications, make sure you select all notifications. So you get to know whenever I'm on. I'm on like every day. So since I know you don't want to miss any of them because they're all super cool. So do that. Subscribe to that and also click all notifications to make sure you're always getting notifications to the best of your ability. And if you want to support the show itself, you can, and you know it's free. I bug you every single time. You can do it. Head to theadvocates.org. They're the sponsor of the show. Take one of the surveys. If you've taken a bunch of them, take one you haven't. Take the survey. It's about 6 or 7 minutes, and then share your results. It makes the advocates happy, makes me happy, supports the show, and it's free. It's like 6 minutes, give or take, something like 5, something like 7. Or you could do the cheesy one, the easy one. Take the world's smallest political quiz. That's like a minute and a half, 2 minutes is it. Take that, share your results. And why does it matter? If you share your results, people will start talking. That's what I want. I want conversations. There's tons of surveys. There's the political, the identity politics, the political correctness survey. There's a foreign policy and national security survey. There's a policing survey. There's all types of stuff, right? So take the survey you like, do that, support the show. It helps us tremendously. Sorry, yapped away. I had to take care of some of that if I could. So Dave's asked a question. He says, Larry, question, are some neighborhoods in New York City lacking police once the sun goes down? Those days are generally over, Dave. The cops are in most neighborhoods. When I was a kid, there were some neighborhoods that were so bad that cops wouldn't go in, and the gangs ran them. That was a thing. Not very much now in New York City. The cops hang around most neighborhoods relatively, clear. The cops, believe it or not, aren't as corrupt as they were in the past. In the 70s, there was a movie called Serpico. If you remember that movie in the 70s, that was literally shot across the street from that movie was shot across the street from my building. That is where I lived. Across from my building, there's several scenes, and it was shot there in the Bronx. So yes, back then, I think we had more issues where cops were kind of paid to stay out of neighborhoods. That isn't the case anymore. So no, generally speaking, the cops are anywhere they want to be. So just a little interesting in that one. So Jason says, Massachusetts? Is that a good one?
Massachusetts. Yeah, that's what I call it.
There we go. So yes. So I got Shelly says, I have a blind cousin who spent summers at our house. He refused to let his kids go to a house with guns in it. I told him we have several guns in our house. We don't bring blind kids shooting. Well, yeah. I would think, and maybe I'm wrong here, if you were blind, that you would like someone to have a firearm who you trust around you because you are, more apt to being robbed or hit or hurt because you lack sight, right? I mean, I'm not saying they're helpless, but you don't have one of the senses. If you were deaf, I would think the same thing, right? If you're lacking one of the senses, you're probably more apt to being somehow taken advantage of or hurt. Wouldn't you want somebody with a firearm to help you out? I would think.
Well,
I mean, obviously, you probably don't want one if you're blind, but
this is why it's important, I think, to teach children gun safety, especially if you have guns in your house or if they're going somewhere else, really ingrain it into them when they're young, what to do if they're at someone's house and a kid brings out, one of your friends brings out a gun. What do you do?
right.
You want to teach them about gun safety from a young age, especially if you have guns yourself, because you want them to understand the responsibility of being around guns, the
Right.
potential danger being around guns at, like, say, someone else's house where a kid's being dumb. You don't know if it's loaded. So I think that's super important because How many accidents do we know have happened because kids didn't know any better?
100%. Yes. And the funny part is, I grew up, my father was in law enforcement. He was a cop and then he was a corrections officer. And back in the early 70s, for those of you who are older, if you remember, bell bottoms were a very common type of jean that the men would wear. So a lot of men had ankle holsters and they keep their firearm when they're off duty. They keep their firearm in their ankle holster because they were all wearing bell bottoms, right? So you could easily have a firearm there. So he had a gun on him all the time. And it never bothered me. Like I was never afraid of guns, none of that stuff. I was fine with it, right? I wasn't trying to grab the gun. He talked to me about it. I never let me shoot it, obviously. I mean, he was like, cops gonna let his kid shoot a gun, right? So it's not gonna happen. But there was never any fear or worry in that regard. So I get that idea. The more you make it a mystery, the more the kid wants it.
You know that when you tell a kid you can't go in that room, you can't do anything, don't touch that box, what's the first thing they do?
Right there.
See,
Right there. Yes.
I didn't grow up with firearms. They weren't really even talked about. It wasn't until like maybe 12 years ago, I actually fired my first handgun. I actually fired my first
Wow.
rifle. I actually fired my first rifle in England on a farm.
Mm.
But I didn't fire my first handgun until right before I moved to New Hampshire. I think that's what made me want to out.
Well, it's
And
funny. We had a lot of when I was a kid, we had practice rifles and we had fake guns because we liked playing army in the park and running around doing that kind of stuff, right? So we had the fake ones where you'd pull the back and you press the button and go ba 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 like that, cap
Mhm.
guns, but
Yeah,
never
oh
an
yeah.
actual. But yeah, a lot of those. Now that's against the law now. But anyway, but the first time I was ever detained was because I had one of those. Cops put me in the back of a car. Yes, because they didn't know if it was real or not. That actually happened to me. So yes, I've
Oh
been
man.
detained more than once, but that was my first time. I was a teenager and I got in the back of a cop car because of that. But
Oh,
anyway, my point being, I never fired an actual gun till I was a Marine. Boot camp.
wow.
So
Yep.
boot camp, 1985 was the first time that first time I fired a firearm. And it was a rifle. And to this day, people always ask me, well, what kind of firearms do you like, Larry? And I still like the 1911 because that's what I learned. That's my first pistol I really used, that and the Beretta. But I still like the 1911 tremendously. I like it because I learned how to fire it, and I still like it. Some people
Mhm.
hate that pistol and tease me about it, but it's the one I like. It's what I know, if that makes any sense. Like I feel
Yeah.
comfortable with it. I could probably still tear it down. I surely could tear down a Beretta still. I could tear down an M16 still to this day. I could still do it. I don't know. I don't know if I remember how to do a pistol again. And I haven't been an active Marine in 30 years. So I still got to get it back in my head. But anyway, yapping away. Kimberly, is there anything that we should be talking about that I didn't cover? Something you want to bring up or talk about?
No, I think it's really important that people actually stand up for what and fight for what is right. You know, I know people probably watching see so many people who just don't know the truth, don't fight
Yeah.
for anything. They just go along to get along. And it's not just with the Second Amendment, it's with all kinds of things that we're seeing that are just completely wrong in our society. And the
Yes.
more people, it's really the political class versus we the people. And that's why
Yes.
they have us
Yes. And yes.
divided. That's why they have us
Yes.
divided. They have us divided based on skin color, gender, whichever gender. They have us class. They have us just so divided, and that's all intentional because
100%.
the political and elitist class knows that if we all get together as we the people like we're supposed to, they would be done. They
100%.
so just
Yes.
keep up fighting, guys. And if you don't fight, you can always reach out, ask how to start. Pay attention locally, especially locally it seems to where you can get more action done.
$100.
The Congress, they don't give a crap. They don't give a crap about us. They do whatever they want. But you can put more pressure on local. So just, you want
Mm,
to get involved and don't know how, reach out,
absolutely.
ask somebody, get to know your local legislators. Just do something because we all have to fight together to stop the
Absolutely.
madness.
So last piece I bring up, Michael says they should have gun ed, just like they have driver's ed in high school.
Hmm.
Make a big difference in responsible gun use. Switzerland arms its citizens and trains them. How much gun violence do they have? Not much, relatively. The problem is mental health problem and lack of gun safety training. It's a point. if you were to go upstate New York 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was a kid or when I was a teenager, you would have found a bunch of people who had driven to school, teenagers, 16, 17, 18, drove to school in the pickup truck, and there's a gun rack
Yep.
with the rifle
Right.
in the pickup truck. That would have been a normal thing you had found.
Yeah.
And no one seemed crazy about it. Like, so yeah, that's Johnny's rifle.
Yeah.
He puts it in the back of the truck. What's the problem?
Yep.
Now, I mean, they're getting arrested. Now little Johnny's going to jail, right?
Right.
But then
And they had rifle teams. They did have gun safety training, or like you said, kids would have their rifles on the back because they were going hunting after school. I mean,
absolutely.
it's totally.
And no one cared.
I don't know when it changed, or well, I know why it changed because of control, but I don't know when that attitude really changed. Maybe it was the assault weapons ban that.
It was afraid Americans.
Yeah.
Once Americans got afraid,
and they keep making them afraid
everything.
over and over with something new.
Again and again.
Climate cult, the climate scam, COVID, everything. Russia's going to come and get us all. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's
Kim
consistent.
says we had a rifle club in high school. This is Hackensack, New Jersey in the 80s. There we go. See? New Jersey, we had it.
Jersey.
Absolutely. Yes.
I was terrified driving through New Jersey when I had to drive through. I did the speed limit like to the T.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Shelley says taking Kevlar from the public makes those who are uncomfortable carrying weapons less safe. Also, New York State, you now can't wear body armor.
What?
Yes, against the law. She's right. Shelley's in New York. Can't wear body armor anymore. They made that illegal. So not only, so they want to defund the police, get rid of body armor, and stop you from having guns. Wow. You get no rights. You just no. You're sheep for the wolves.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's like they're sacrificing law-abiding citizens to the criminals who they've already given a free ride with the bail reform and the DAs in certain places. It really is. In my opinion, it's treasonous what they're doing to this country and what they're doing to all of us.
Alice says we had rifle teams in schools. Man, I picked a little thing. People started jumping on board. Yes, I remember when we were in high school, it wasn't a thing, right? But now it is. Anyway, I have kept you far too long, Kimberly. I want to say thank you so much for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. For those of you who are going to be paying attention tomorrow, I'm doing a very special New Year's show from noon to 3, only on Sharpway stuff, only on Sharpway Twitter, Sharpway YouTube, and a Sharpway Facebook only. It's going to be talking about personal change for the new year. I will see you all very soon.